Good morning and welcome. Welcome to my live stream, Fight CPS with your host, Bob Pace. It's a warm welcome on July 28th, 2025. You found me on Facebook and I'm glad you did. My morning show is Fight CPS with Bob Pace. I'm also in the evening, Fight CPS and Stop Taking Our Children. These two live streams are on twice a day, 7 days a week. That's 14 live streams. And I've been doing this since October 23. That's 21 months ago. Week after week, month after month, and year after year. I've not missed one of these days. I've always had two shows a day. My times for these shows have varied in the past, but typically I start my morning show Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. And then on the weekend, it's 8 a.m. And my evening show is every night of the week at 7 p.m. Now, from time to time, especially in the fall season, there's football. And it's Friday Night Lights with high school football. And I've been following a high school for over 10 years. My son played on that high school, won 2 national championships, got to play in the Rose Bowl and the Coliseum, LA Coliseum. Pretty remarkable. Through all the adversity that we had gone through with CPS, he survived. Now, I too was a victim, just like you all. And what happened to me was unfortunate. And why? Because a simple life skill dealing with CPS I did not know. Now, my life has been full of life skills. Everybody's life is full of life skills. Life skills are things you can't really learn in a book. You're not born with it. You don't know the knowledge. They are events in your life that deal with simple things. In your early life, it's bullying. Especially as a young child, there's a lot of bulliers. Also, in your early years, it's talking to strangers. As you get older, it evolves around drugs and the facts of life. You become more interested in the other human being. God created a man and a woman to procreate the world. So you learn about sex, you learn about dating, you learn about relationships. But again, they're not really a class or anything in there. Well, CPS is involved sometimes in your early life. And that's something that should have been taught in school. I believe life skills should happen every day that you're in school for 1 hour. If you're in school for 8 hours, 1 hour should be devoted to life skills. Simple things: how to do your checkbook, how to do a savings account, how to buy insurance, car insurance, life insurance. There's insurance that we forget about called legal insurance. That's one thing I didn't think about. Because with legal insurance, you have the money and ability to hire a professional attorney, is what you need in here. Because in order to fight CPS, you need an attorney that's trained in juvenile law, family law, and dependency law. Not a criminal attorney, not a court-appointed attorney or a public defender. Of course, these attorneys cost money because attorneys work in a business where they have what's called a retainer. It's upfront money to start the case so they feel comfortable doing their job. If they do a dribble job where you pay them $100 a week, they're not going to do your case well. Now, the attorneys will have an hourly fee that they'll charge against the depository retainer. And if you had insurance and you paid a premium, just like you do with the other insurance, you will have the money for a retainer to get an attorney. Fighting CPS is like open heart surgery. You are going to get a doctor trained and educated with a lot of experience to cut open your chest cavity, to take your heart out and replace a valve or replace other components within your body. So a doctor is a specialist. They go to school and they get trained. Then they have an internship where they learn more about medicine. Then they usually have a mentor before they actually do the performance of open heart surgery. Well, the same goes true in the child protection system. That's what I call CPS. These CPS entities have different names in every county, in every state, and every country in the world. Yes, I mentioned every country. I also have 22 countries that have either texted in or called in that have had some issue with the child protection system. Now, I'm just using the CPS as the easy way to describe a government entity that was mandated by Congress. It wasn't until 1962 that we had the name the Child Protection System, where every county in every state had to have a group of social workers protect their children from neglect and abuse, but also do what's called family reunification. But lately, CPS is doing more than helping. They are pulling families apart. They're abusing family members. They're abusing the parents and the grandparents. It's sickening of the stories I hear what they do. How they take a child who isn't in danger from the parents, take a child at birth, still attached with the umbilical cord. There's some gross things I've heard from and seen. There's not only trafficking into foster care by our children, there's medical trafficking where they sit and wait and pray in hospitals and force parents to have children's organs removed because it was mistaken by a doctor. Recently, I was involved in one of those. Parents came into my room here. Bob, we have a problem. Our child had developed abdominal pains. We took our child to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician, this is a 4-year-old child, said he didn't know what was causing her pain. So they took him to the hospital. In the hospital, all they did was a little sonogram. And they thought something was wrong with the appendix. But the pain was on the left side, not the right side where appendix would. Anybody would have known that if they had studied about appendixes. That's what I learned. I learned with this family on this on this show. That the social worker that happened to be hanging out, because they are these days in emergency rooms and other places, urgent care, so forth, think they have an audacity, or probably saying that wrong, that they know medicine and they can force parents, and they did. These parents wanted a second opinion. And The social worker said you're going to be charged with medical neglect. This is the trafficking I was telling you about. I've already talked about the foster care trafficking, children trafficking that CPS does legally, which is illegal by anybody else, but somehow they have the power to traffic our children into foster care. What I mean by trafficking is automatically, when a case is reported, they automatically take the child who isn't in danger. I know firsthand. My children are ripped from me. They're in school every day. They're in school that day when they were taken from me. My 9-year-old son, who I picked up from school, was with me when all these groups of so-called professionals there to investigate a alleged neglect or abuse. They wouldn't tell me what. They just said, well, we've had this report here from these people. These people were referring to were my wife's parents, my in-laws, who were reportedly for 5 years, but I couldn't understand why CPS was into me. And I met with them, by the way, under the lights. Ain showed them my house several times. Of course, I didn't know back then that it was my in-laws. They've been after our family since we got married, my wife and I. And that was over 32 years ago. But that's how corrupt CPS is, because they listen to what people say, and over 75% of the time they're wrong. Over the 75% of the time they're wrong. And that is necessary, a sad thing. Now, there's two kinds of reporters. There's your professional reporters, and then there's your lay reporters. Now, my in-laws were the lay people. They're like your neighbor down the street, maybe friends or acquaintances, the guy at the store, the girl at the beauty shop, whatever. They're not trained and they don't really know neglect and abuse. We need this to be investigated if there's true signs of neglect and abuse. But my in-laws were doing more than that. They were making up stories. They're in Ohio. How can someone in Ohio say things about living here or investigating our home? They would call California. And I'd meet with these social workers who out of the blue would sit there, we're coming to investigate your children don't take baths. Or we're coming to investigate you don't pay for utilities. Or we're coming together because you don't feed your children. Or we're coming together because you don't take them to school. They painted a horrid picture. And I did not know it was my in-laws. They were trying to undermine and take advantage of a situation I got myself in through no fault of my own. In 2010, I was laid off through no fault of my own. And I don't want to take time to tell you about it, but it was wrong. And I was afraid because I had a forever home that I had purchased. It took me 45 years ago, 45 years of hard work to get this home. And I lived about a mile to the beach. I had CC&Rs. And also this time of life, I was 6 years old and 65 at the time that they were taking my children or ordering to take my children. I was naive about CPS. I was naive about the police. I never really had much trouble with the police or much trouble with anybody. I was a guy that gave a lot of his time to the American Red Cross as a volunteer. I gave a lot of my time to the Boy Scouts of America, especially when my boys were involved through the Cub Scouting and the Boy Scouting program. Scouting, by the way, has changed. It's no longer called Boy Scouts. It's called Scouting because they got girls in it now. Anyway, these so-called professionals, were asking me about these things. And when they said they weren't in school, I said, well, here are their grade reports. They're not fabricated by me. Here are the teachers. Here are the notes I'd taken at the parent-teacher conferences. Here's the things they had at open house, the pictures and stuff. What are you talking about? Not doing well in school. One child was going to a private high school. Another child was in middle school, and the youngest child was in elementary school. Now, I have 6 children, 3 older ones and 3 younger ones. And at the time that they invaded my home for I don't know how many times, and they were in the process of taking my children, my youngest, who was at 25, I think she was 26, she moved out the year before in 2014. She graduated from college. I was so proud of her. And she was out on her own. She flew the nest. And my other 2 were living out on their own too. One's a school teacher, and the other one's an officer in the United States Air Force. Worked in JAG. It's the military attorney department. Anyway, I had 3 older children and 3 younger children. And they were coming to see me every time. And then finally, I guess they got tired and they got the police involved. And so this detective tracked me down and followed me. Then he had me stop on a false traffic violation because he knew that I wouldn't stop for an unmarked car. That's something that's really sad out there. So he wanted me to be stopped. So he got a black and white. And never thought to me when this guy was sitting there saying some violation that happened 3 miles back and 10 minutes ago, I said to myself, why didn't he stop me then? Anyway, he mentioned that a undercover policeman would like to talk to me. And I said, oh, geez, that's dangerous. But I trusted him. And he said he ordered me home with my son in tow. I said, I need to pick up my wife. She's waiting for me. I should have said to him right then and there, either write me up or let me go get my wife and we'll talk later. I did not know my constitutional rights. They're bad. The police where I live are bad. We have good police and bad police, and they're bad. Anyway, I followed him, and waiting for me was all these people that CPS had gotten. There were 5 social workers, 5, not just 1, but 5. And they were determined to find out something wrong with my life. I mean, I was a community person who gave a lot of his time to the community. I organized, ran surfing contests, around the world. I traveled for 25 years, lived out of a bag before I got married. Anyway, I was well respected. They not only had the 5 social workers, they had, it's 3 social workers. It was 5 firemen. So when firemen come, they bring all the troops. When you call out the fire truck, they all come. And there was 2 uniformed policemen, I guess to keep law and order. Thought maybe I was intimidating to them. I'm a big man. I played football and rugby. I was an avid surfer, and so I was a big guy. But my 9-year-old son had to see all this. Now, with the policemen, the firemen, the social workers, were two code enforcement. And I guess the code enforcement, all these people like to have friends with them. Now, I had a beautiful home, a forever home. And my forever home uh, was a mile away from the beach. It was an expensive home. It wasn't a cheap home. It was a 6-digit home. Oh, 7-digit home. Yeah, I can't do my math right. It's a 7-digit home. And they had been out to my place numerous times. They already see my home. I mean, I showed my food cupboards full of food and stuff and everything. But they were on a mission to try to catch me with something that supposedly I did that was wrong, that CPS was after me. And like a fool, I didn't know my constitutional and civil rights, so I opened up and talked. I had nothing to hide. I was completely open and honest with them. And if I knew my constitutional rights, I would say, I'd ask them, I says, is this a legal matter? If it's a legal matter, I want my attorney here. I cannot let you into my home without my attorney. And they would have to go out and get a warrant, which I understand warrants are pretty easy to get. They're not a hard thing to get. So anyway, all these troops came storming into my house. We opened my house up. I didn't know you couldn't open your house. I didn't know you had to have a warrant or they had to have a just cause to break in your home. I mean, there's only 3 ways you get in a home. Either you give them permission to come in the home, and they also take that permission, which mean you give them permission to search your home, which is wrong. So I'm at their mercy. I'm at their mercy. As the firemen run around the house checking for what? Smoke alarms and fire extinguishers. I had them all. They were measuring to make sure the smoke alarms were properly installed. This was a home built in 1998. It wasn't that old. I moved in 2004, so I was the second homeowner. And so it had all the up-to-date alarms. It had fire extinguishers I personally put in, one at the kitchen and one at the garage. You know, I had them situated so if their fire broke out, I'd have a extinguisher to put it out. So they were busy doing that. The code enforcement were looking for code things like I had a great walk-in swimming pool, rock bottom. You felt so good on your feet. Waterfalls, a grotto with a jacuzzi connected with another waterfall. It was a beautiful pool, but it was surrounded by a fence that someone would have to climb the fence or break the gate in to get in. Also, the back door to the pool had a double lock and a chain lock so that a little person couldn't open the door and come out the pool and drown. That's what they're looking for. So that frustrated code enforcement. Now, they did come across a couple things. They thought the front of my gate was a little loose and my screws need tightening. And they said that your yard needed cutting. And I told them, unfortunately, I had lost my job and I had to let the landscaper go because I couldn't afford him. So, you know, I was 65 at the time. And yes, I could still healthily do things, but the yard was not one of my worries at the moment. My worries was getting a job, taking care of my family. That's always been my goal since I got married, taking care of my family. It still is today. It still is today, and I'm still looking for work. I'm still looking for that work. But it's hard to look for work when they put a record on you that CPS labels people are not going to hire you. Not only you have to fight your age, and I didn't sort of look, I was 65. I'm 75, by the way, now. And I'm still physically fit. I still go out surfing. I still go for hikes and walks, ride a bicycle, even a skateboard to keep my balance going. And I still go off in the mountains and go snowboarding or skiing or hiking or camping out. I do sailing and diving. So I'm still very healthy. But it's, as you know, it's hard to get a job. But these three social workers started making up stories. They started finding, they couldn't find anything in my home. The only thing that my home had since the last visit by the child protection system was I had my belongings that were from my parents in the living room. Now, what that meant is that my parents were dying, or at least my dad had just died recently. My mom was not too far behind. And I had, per their request, taken their belongings of 55 years of marriage. He was a fine man. He was an officer in the United States Navy. He had commanded ships and fleets. He had fought in three wars: World War II, the Korean War, and Vietnam, with many tours of duties. He'd worked in Washington, D.C. for several presidents, and he had worked as the executive director of the Pentagon, the XO. The Secretary of Defense is an elected position. Anyway, it's hard sometimes because I sometimes don't talk about this. And we have right now no one in the room, and this is being re-recorded so people can listen to this later. And by the way, I put on the screen the banner of what you can do as far as texts and messages. And where it says country, you don't need to put the country unless you're outside of the country. Now I have 22 countries. The United States is 23. And I've talked to Indonesia, Bangladesh, to India, over to the Middle East, to Saudi Arabia, to Libya, then over the continent of Africa, to Liberia, to Sudan, to Republic of Congo, to Rwanda, to Mozambique, down to South Africa, several of the provinces of South Africa, then up to Europe, to the United Kingdom, England, Scotland, Wales, and then Denmark and Sweden. Then across the pond to North America, to Canada, in several provinces, and then the United States, and all 50 states have called in or texted, including not a state, but the Washington, D.C., which is the District of Columbia, which I think now has a different name. It's very confusing what the District of Columbia is, or Washington, D.C. The federal government has its own separate entity there. Then south of the border of Mexico, then further south in South America, north of Brazil on the east coast, Grenada. Then across the South Pacific, New Zealand, and then the land down under, Australia and its states. So that's a lot of people. It's 2,500 people I'm talking to. They all have something in common. They encountered a rogue CPS. That means a CPS entity that's gone bad, that their primary goal is to make money off you. To make money off you. And how they generate the money is by keeping your children in custody and getting easy money that comes from the federal government, money that is not watched or accounted for. There's no directors or supervisors from the federal government to the state to the county that watches all this. At the county level, there are your supervisors and managers and a director. That's it. There are the people called CASA, which are like ears for CPS. You don't want to deal with them. There's ombudsperson. I've heard pros and cons, and civil rights coordinators at the state level. But there's no one watching CPS or controlling CPS. So that money flows in the billions to the state and in the millions to the county. For instance, one child, while in custody of CPS, receives $20,000 from the federal government. Your taxes are paying $20,000 to the agency, who in turn sends money like bonuses to the social worker, so that my social worker can buy her Gucci purse every week, her eye makeup. She used to brag about what she'd buy with her bonuses. It's sad. They get a bonus, by the way, for having a child adopted. In 1997, President Clinton signed the Law of the Incentive Act, which says $35,000 will be granted to every CPS entity in every county in every state for a child adopted into foster care. They don't believe in family reunification because it takes too long and it's too hard work. But studies have proven that the best parents are the biological parents. Now, it's sad that when this social entity was created from social services, it was not well thought out. There should be a board of directors or supervisors. Even social services is kind of free hand. You know, it's really sad. It's really sad. I've been dealing with social services because of my income situation, but they don't help you. They make up stories, they make up mistakes. They're supposed to give you food if you qualify, medical if you need medical help, clothing, shelter, transportation, education, even medical insurance, even a job. But social services is corrupt too. It's being investigated by DOGE, Department of Government Entity Efficiency. I know this because several weeks I was talking to an intake worker. But anyway, I'm trying to tell you that this agency is not to be trusted. Now, we have some people coming into my room finally. Great. I made some comments. Dorothy Cook, so glad to see you. So glad to see you. You're a light in my eyes. Dorothy Cook is a wonderful lady. I've talked to her so times a show. She had a horrible, horrible case in CPS. She's from North Carolina, and she likes to come into my show twice a day and help narrate. Help narrate and reinforce what I'm talking about. And again, I thank you, Dorothy. She also asked me questions. That's one thing I work off the best. Now, besides text a message, you can also be a guest on my show. And I can take 9 of you. Be a guest on my show is easy. All you do is you pick one of my 14 shows, my Sunday morning show or my Saturday night show or Wednesday morning or Tuesday, whatever. And you send an email to my show producer. It's up on the screen. And it's at grace@vincentwdavis.com. Anyway, that email, you email her, and she'll send you a link. that you copy and paste onto your browser. I was looking for notes here. I like that I have emoji here from Dorothy Cook. Thank you very much that you care. It's a hard thing at times to talk when nobody wants to talk. Hi, Carrie Sampson from Georgia. How do you get transcripts from court in Georgia? You go to the clerk office in the court, give them your case number, and she'll show you a computer that you can go on. It's a public computer. And if you want copies of the documents, you can make copies, and that's how it works. Now, if you can't afford copies, you're indigent, meaning that you're poor, you fill out a form about your finances. And on your honor, they'll waive the cost of documents. Sometimes the documents are $1 a piece. I don't know what they are in Georgia, but any clerk will help you out. It's the clerk of the court your case is in. If you're in dependency court or family court, that's the courthouse you go to, and there's a clerk's office that has the records. You just say you want to see copies of your records. You're entitled to that. You can request that. So you know what they have submitted in court. It's not necessarily the documents that CPS has. It's what's been submitted in court. What does the judge have? That's what you need to see, Carrie. So you give me your court, your number. Every case will have a number. How it works is that when you're investigated, the public entity will take out a number from the county. They say, this is so-and-so, I need this number. They give you a number. And that's how you track your documents. And they should give this to you. The screen froze and I had to, okay, that's right, Dorothy. That happens to me all the time. My computer does the same thing. I'm trying to get a new computer. The problem is I needed a computer back in January. I've saved now 6 months. I have enough money to buy a computer, but now all the computers have tripled in price. It's sad how much things have gone up. Yes, there's a new processor out. Here's another sidebar about life skill. The latest processor by Intel, and I stick with Intel only because more software applications are geared for the Intel processor than the other known processors out there. The Ultra Core 9 processor is the fastest. It's faster than the i9 14th generation Intel. Also, they have a new video card by Nvidia, who is the leader in GPUs, the graphics. The graphics processing unit, the GPU. That's what the video card's called. They're at the 50 series now. 50, 50, 50, 50, 60, 50, 70, 50, 80, 50, 90. I feel that the 5070 is about as high as you need to go. If you're at 4,000, 8,000 K, then maybe the 50, 80, or 90, but you're going to pay something like $500 more. So the 57 is good, and the Ultra 9 processor is good for a CPU, and then you need a lot of RAM. And 32 should be enough now, and it can be upgraded to 64. And the 5070 will come with 12 gigs of RAM for it. So that'll be a good GPU. Then don't forget your hard drive, your terabyte. 2 terabytes, a good one. But that is all for people that play a lot of gaming and stuff. But if you're at a lower level, you don't need all that. You can get by with a lot less. That's something you will have to shop around. But that's another one of life skills we could talk about one day is how to get a computer. No, that's a gaming computer, a laptop. Now, Dorothy says, welcome from Georgia. Indigent requesting a copy. That's Carrie. A free copy of your CPS case that was submitted to court. It has a court case number. Okay, good. That's how you're going to see your stuff there, Carrie Sampson from Georgia. I'm so glad you're here, Carrie. And of course, you too, Dorothy. Thanks, Mr. Bob, she says. I have court next month, and I'm just trying to get all my documents. Yes, you need to see them. Because what's in court is what the judge is going to act on. What's in court, the judge is going to act on. So the judge is supposed to be a referee. But what's so sad, and by the way, I need to put my phone number up because you may want to call in, and I hope you do. There's my phone number, 626-698-0990. And I have about another 10 minutes left. And the CPS is a hard agency to deal with. And I cannot emphasize my rule number one is you get yourself an attorney. An attorney that is trained in background in juvenile law, family law, and dependency law. Those are the three laws that go together for fighting your CPS case. But see, this judge that hears a case, that man's in charge of your life, which I think is really bad. I think there should be jury trials in CPS cases. But they don't do it because they worry about the children. The children will be protected. But one individual entrusted with your lives of the family is wrong. He could be a bad judge, a judge that's not even trained. I had a judge that had no knowledge about family reunification or juvenile law or family law or dependency law. He was a collision claims judge, meaning that he decide on injuries and claims, collision car accidents. That's the judge that decided the fate of our family. And that is totally sad when that is allowed. But see, there's so many changes in CPS that need to be done. And you have to be careful. That's why you need that attorney in court. And I have one there, Vincent W. Davis. And you can call in right now and hire him at 888-888-6582. You reach reception, make sure you tell them that Bob Pace sent you. And when you speak to Mr. Davis, make sure that you mention that Bob Pace sent you. His rate is $500 an hour, and he will retain you in LA County for approximate $5,000 retainer. That's where his office is. He's a little bit more money when he goes out of state because he has to provide for air transportation, ground transportation, hotel accommodations, and food. Also, he needs to get a license to practice law in that state. So there's a license fee. Those are all tacked on. I know the other day in Georgia, Atlanta, a couple was interested in retaining Mr. Davis as $125,000. Another couple in Milwaukee, Wisconsin was another $125,000. So I don't know if that's the high end or the low end, but his rates are all over the place. Same thing in California. But he's a reasonable attorney and he's the best. He has over 39 years of fighting CPS and getting your children back. Gotten back thousands of kids. He's a trial attorney and he's also a civil rights attorney. When your case is over, he's the best man to sue, both in state or federal court. He's won millions of dollars. Anyway, if you call in or you're on my show for 15 minutes, excuse me, if you call in or you're on my show as a guest, you get a free 15-minute private Zoom consultation with Mr. Davis. Free. And he's not a clock watcher. You make your list of questions and prioritize them. And you ask away. All you have to do is call in or be on my show as a guest. And I verify that and send off the information to my show producer, who will set you up with that private 15-minute consultation with Mr. Davis. Now, I know that I'm bouncing around, but I try to make each show differently. If you listen to my other shows, I go in depth about my 5 rules. Besides getting an attorney, you need to do documentation. And besides documentation, rule number 3 says you do not speak to social services or the police, and you certainly don't let them in your home, and you do not give up your children in medical situations. Again, they have to have a warrant, or there has to be extreme danger to your child before they can interfere or come in. But if you give them permission, they're going to come in and then they'll run the gamut in your home. Mistake that I made, I regret. They didn't find anything except my parents' belongings, who said, "Oh my goodness, you stacked up boxes and have furniture piled on top of each other." Well, I did that because of space. The living room was not used by anything but guests. And they could walk around. They had their own private rooms upstairs with private bathrooms. I mean, I had a forever home, and forever my kids were spoiled. That's the one mistake in my life I think I did, is I spoiled my kids too much because I wanted the things that my parents couldn't give me. That was financial freedom. But I made a mistake. I did invest it, but my investment was lost through my company's group that invested badly in stocks and bonds. The market dropped. I lost $300,000 right then and there. Later, I had to sell my forever home because I couldn't maintain the mortgage longer than 7 years without some type of a job. I had 7 years worth of savings. I mean, I had, it's ridiculous, but I did. I can't believe I was able to keep my home that long. Anyway, I had to hire an attorney, and that's where all my money went to, was an attorney, because my family is that important. And so that should be one of your priorities. But rule number 4 is how they use the internet. And rule number 5 is to collect all your important documents, make copies of them. There are 5 rules. They're in my other shows, and we don't have the time here. It's already 11 o'clock, and I need to end the show. I've already gone over. And I want to thank Dorothy for coming in here again and helping me. Carrie, I appreciate your question and what you're doing to fight your case. And I appreciate all of you that are not here, like Cruella, who is Felicia from Oxnard, California, who has a terrible eviction case and lost her 2 babies. She has her 2 babies mean loss. They won't be returned to her, and she's fighting CPS on that. So she's a double whammy there. There's Christina Reynosa in Las Vegas, Nevada, who's helped a lot of people. There's people in every state that I care about. Betty Jo in Montana, Bartley in Montana. Wilmington, Delaware is a sweet, sweet lady there. Faye Manley in Kentucky, Virginia. Prayers go out to her all the time that she's doing better. Margaret King, who comes in here as often. The other day, there was a message from someone who's been in my room a long time, sent a message in there. I forgot to thank her. She did an emoji. But all of you, thank you very much for being a part of my show for these last 21 months. Actually, starting in August will be 22 months. But I continue to do this show, but it's based on you and how much you put in the show, how much you get out of it. I'm just a resource. I'm a loving father and a husband of 6 children and 42 years of marriage. Please, please follow God. He'll give you strength. Stay on that train of life there, the train that's running down the railroad tracks. And remember, the left rail is your circle of life. Make it as big as you can so you're around here a long time. Why? Because the right rail is your stairway to heaven. And the timbers, ties that connect it to are your good deeds that you're going to try to do every day. Try to do at least one good deed a day because you need to go to heaven, and keep your faith in God. With that being said, don't give up on your children. Don't give up fighting. I'll see you tonight at 7 p.m. That's Pacific Standard Time for my show, Fight CPS and Stop Taking Our Children. There'll be a brief video and inspiration about Vincent Davis following my time when I leave here. So God bless you and have a beautiful day.
A vivid picture is encrypted in your mind as the critics get in line like they're witnessing a crime. But then you notice there's a shiver in your spine from the feelings of discontentment and bitterness combined. Heartbroken when you listen to the judges, another kid's innocence corrupted. And if you go against then it's destructive. Consider this predicament the toughest, but we believe in a system fit for justice. Child Protective Services only pretends to save it. The one solution for this is worthy of instant praises. 30 years of experience with relentless cases. Allow me to introduce them. This is Vincent Davis defending you when they don't think a mother fits the role. Is it juvenile dependency or government control? Observe the pain in their eyes. It's time for us to realize we are the last one.